The day my daughter, Chloe, was accepted into university, my dead wife returned. Standing beside her, nestled intimately against him, was the man she could never forget from her youth, the luminous first love she'd held in her heart for a decade. A whole decade, from their youth to the cusp of middle age. I felt a primal urge to rush forward, to demand an answer. Why did you leave me to face everything alone? But Chloe's hand gripped my arm like a vice. Her face, a mask of sheer annoyance, twisted as she hissed, "Dad, stop it. Everyone's happy today. Do you have to ruin it by digging up this ugly mess?" It wasn't until the crowd thinned and I saw my daughter expertly fall into my wife's lover's embrace, calling him Dad, with a sweet, familiar tone, that I understood. For 10 long years, I was the only one wrapped in a cocoon of lies. My daughter had finally made it to university. She would carry my own squandered dreams with her to the big city. The day before her acceptance banquet, she came to my room, her eyes welling with tears as she thanked me. "Dad," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "all these years, without Mom, you raised me all by yourself. You had to take care of our whole extended family. It's been so hard on you. If it weren't for you, I don't think I could have made it." Looking at my crying daughter, my heart swelled with a complex mix of pride and sorrow. Years of laboring under the scorching sun had left me gaunt and dark, my hands a landscape of calluses that felt like sandpaper against my own face. I once had a respectable job, a life of promise. But that ended the day I asked my wife, Clara, to deliver a file to my older brother. The day of the car crash. When I rushed back from my business trip, all that greeted me was a small box of her ashes and my brother's cold, granite tombstone. For a decade, I hadn't just raised our daughter. I'd shouldered the financial burden of Clara's parents and my brother's grieving family. Finally, this day had come, the fruit of all my labor. At the banquet, I watched my poised, elegant daughter on stage, sharing her thoughts and dreams. As I watched, a figure at a nearby table seemed uncannily familiar. My eyes darted from Chloe on stage to the woman at the table. Could it be? This person, she looked so much like Chloe's mother. The small mole on the tip of her nose was identical to Clara's. I had to know. I pushed myself up and walked over. As I got closer, I saw the familiar jade bracelet on her wrist and the faint white line of a scar I knew so well. It was her. It was truly my wife, Clara. A tidal wave of emotion crashed over me, leaving me speechless, my body trembling uncontrollably. Just as I was about to call her name, a hand clamped down on my arm. I turned to see Chloe, having just stepped down from the stage. "I found her. I found your mother," I whispered excitedly, turning back to share the miracle. But Clara was gone. The 2 seats at the table were empty. "Dad, Mom has been dead for years." Chloe's voice was sharp, cutting. "You don't have to ruin my acceptance party today, do you?" I looked at my daughter, then at the empty chairs. Defeated, I let her lead me back to my seat. She was right. I had held the box of her ashes myself. She had died over a decade ago. This woman must have just been a startling coincidence. The thought plunged me back into a familiar abyss of grief. If only I hadn't asked her to deliver that file, none of this would have happened. After forcing myself to see off the last of our friends and relatives, I realized I'd left my phone at the hotel. As I approached the banquet hall to retrieve it, I heard my daughter's voice, clear as a bell. She was calling someone Dad in that sweet, lilting way of hers. If he was her dad, then who was I? "Mom, Dad, can't you two be more careful?" Chloe's voice was a chiding whisper. "My other dad saw you both. I was lucky I stopped him in time. Otherwise he would have found you out, you know. I told you we could just meet up near the university," she continued. "You live in the city, he's stuck in this county. How would he ever find out? But no, you had to come." "What? They weren't dead? And my child knew?" I stared at the 2 of them, impeccably dressed and clean. Clara's hand was wrapped tightly around the arm of the man beside her. And me? Even on this celebratory day, I was dressed in clothes riddled with patches. I knew who he was. He was Clara's first love, Julian. He was my brother. Clara's parents had vehemently opposed their relationship, forcing them apart. But it was all a lie. They had been together all along. I was the only fool. A profound sense of powerlessness washed over me. I wanted to scream, to confront them, but my throat was sealed shut. All I could do was watch them, a happy family of 3, laughing and talking, planning a future that had no place for me. After Clara's death, my mother-in-law had raised hell at my workplace. The public pressure became so immense that I was eventually fired. But it didn't end there. She forced me to sign an agreement, a promise that I would never remarry and would dedicate my life to caring for their family. Drowning in grief, I signed it without a second thought. The first year after I lost my job, their true colors were revealed. Clara's parents did nothing at home. I even got on my knees and begged them. Dad, Mom, you don't have to do anything around the house. Just please watch Chloe while I'm at work, okay? They would mumble their agreement, but it was just empty words. One evening, I came home to find Chloe, only 7 years old, rummaging through the trash for the leftover milk in their discarded cartons. And they still had the gall to ask me for their living expenses for the month. It's not that I didn't think of leaving, of taking Chloe and starting over. But every time I tried, they would find me. They would show up at whatever menial job I'd managed to secure and create a scene, screaming that I had killed their daughter, that I had ruined their family. I did so much. I bore the brunt of her family's cruelty. And for what? So she could use my back as a stepping stone to find her own happiness? The absurdity of it was suffocating. Over the years, I lost count of the times I was humiliated in their home, forced to swallow my pride and my pain. I struggled, the rage and resentment, the shame and sorrow, tearing me to pieces. Finally, my voice returned. You're not dead. The three of them froze, their faces a mixture of shock and fear. As they turned to face me, Clara's lips moved, but no sound came out. My daughter, the child I had raised with my own 2 hands, looked flustered, trying to form an explanation. Dad, let me explain. My gaze swept across their faces, desperately searching for someone to tell me this was a nightmare, for someone to explain what had happened. Seeing my expression, Chloe trailed off, speechless. Clara finally managed to speak a single phrase. I'm sorry. Sorry for what? For deceiving me for a decade? For living a life of leisure with my brother while I was being systematically broken by her family? A salty taste filled my mouth. I was crying. Then why didn't you come back? I asked, my voice cracking, a torrent of vulnerability and grief pouring out. Just come back. That's all it would have taken. I wouldn't have blamed her. I wouldn't have cared about the lies, as long as she was alive. But why? She chose to become a ghost, handing me all the burdens while she pursued her great love. And now that the fruit of my labor was ripe, she returned to say, our daughter is grown up. It's best for her to be with us. Then what was I? A placeholder? Were my 10 years, my entire life, just a meaningless sacrifice? As a crowd of onlookers began to gather, Chloe's patience snapped. Dad, stop making a scene, she barked. Can't we talk about this at home? Do you have to air our dirty laundry in public and embarrass all of us? Was I making a scene? Was I embarrassing her? I looked at the daughter I had raised and managed a pained, apologetic smile. In her eyes, I didn't even have the right to seek the truth. In the end, Chloe brought them back to my house. The broken furniture, the clutter of junk everywhere, the half-eaten steamed bun on the table, everything about the place was a stark contrast to the polished figures of Clara and Julian. Clara surveyed the room with a look of undisguised disgust. This is where you've had our daughter living all these years, she asked. When I didn't respond, she sighed dramatically. In the blink of an eye, she's all grown up. You've worked hard. Then, her tone shifted. You know, all these years away I've missed. You're painting. Why don't you paint a portrait of me and Julian? Like a wedding photo. We never got to have one. Oh, and be sure to add Chloe in. She's our little treasure, after all. I didn't even look at her. A cold, bitter laugh escaped my lips. The audacity of you two. It's thicker than the Great Wall. Why didn't you just die for real out there? When we were first married, I was never sure if Clara had truly forgotten my brother. But I believed that love could conquer all. I told her not to worry about housework, to just enjoy her life. I obeyed her every whim, terrified of displeasing her. I even gave away the cat I'd had for 6 years because Clara complained about it, and Chloe was supposedly allergic to the fur. I would sit by the window for hours, sketching her into beautiful landscapes, dreaming of the day she would finally accept me, the day I could take her to get a real wedding portrait. But every painting I gave her ended up in the trash can. What's the point of painting this rubbish all day? She would sneer. I would just quietly pick up the torn pieces. Later, my heart aching. She treated me with such coldness that I learned not to disturb her. A decade had passed, and only now did I see the true depth of their shamelessness. They had already settled themselves in the only clean spot in the house, striking a pose. My words hung in the air, and all three of them stared at me in disbelief. The same disbelief I felt when I found the body of my cat in a dumpster weeks after I had given it away. Clara's eyes widened dramatically. Do you have any idea what you were saying? Of course I knew, but I couldn't swallow this bitterness any longer. I needed the truth. I needed justice for the man I used to be. Just as I was about to press further, Chloe cut in, her voice laced with irritation. Dad, what is it you want to ask? Isn't it enough that Mom is back? I grew up without a mother's care. You didn't do a great job taking care of me. That's a fact, isn't it? Now she's back. And do you know how happy that makes me? Just stop being angry with her. And what's wrong with wanting a wedding portrait? She continued, her voice rising. Mom and Uncle Julian have been together for so long. If you don't want to paint it, just say so. I'll take them to a studio to get one done. The words I wanted to say were trapped in my throat. It was only then that I truly understood. In her heart, my daughter resented me. I looked at her, forcing the words out, one by one. Why is this my fault? Were they incapable of hiring someone else to look after you? So, you blame me for your mother not being there as you grew up. I had remained calm when faced with my resurrected wife and brother. I had kept my composure when I saw their intimacy. But hearing my own daughter blame me for her mother's absence, the dam of my suppressed emotions finally burst. This is my house. All of you get out. I roared, reaching out to push them towards the door. Seeing me shove them, Chloe exploded. Enough. What is wrong with you? So you raised me for a few years. Big deal. Can't you think about me for once? Your measly little earnings were never enough for my expenses. Besides, you're not even my real father. What right do you have to tell me what to do? Her words, one accusation after another, were like a series of hammer blows. Something inside my head snapped. I stood there, frozen. Clara, seeing my state, smiled at Julian. See? I told you your little brother wouldn't dare to lose his temper with us. Even after finding out the daughter he raised for 10 years isn't his, he just takes it. Besides, she added with a cruel smirk, he knows we faked our deaths to be together, and he still hasn't said a harsh word to us. So don't worry. If it comes down to it, we'll just say he was the one who interfered in our marriage. Julian glanced at me, his eyes filled with contempt and provocation. How can you say that about my dear brother? He said with mock sincerity. He's not without a temper. He's a saint, a stoic. He can endure anything, like a dog that never whimpers, no matter how hard you kick it. Even Chloe chimed in, a smirk on her face. Dad, no, Uncle. I won't call you Dad anymore. My real father is back now. I was shattered. I wanted to lunge at her, to scream. She's not my daughter? Then whose daughter is she? Were my 10 years for nothing? My youth, my future, all destroyed by these people. I suddenly remembered Chloe in the hotel, her familiar, affectionate tone. The sweet calls of Dad were all for my brother. My eyes locked onto Chloe. You knew all along? Realizing her slip, she fell silent. Julian stepped in with a show of false sincerity. Leo, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hide the fact that Chloe is my daughter. But Clara and I are truly in love. Please, just forgive us. His words were pleading, but his tone was laced with impatience and disdain. I finally broke. My eyes, bloodshot and wild, stared at him. What right do you have to say that? I bellowed. You have a wife and a son. You're here talking about true love with my wife, while I was left to support your entire family for a decade. Chloe, who had been silent, rushed forward and pushed me. Enough. All you care about is money, money, money. No wonder Mom left you. Dad, just give in. I had worked 3 jobs at once, worried she wouldn't have enough to eat or wear. I was terrified she would be looked down upon at school, so I gave her the living. Expenses for 2 people, leaving myself with almost nothing. The thought made me snap. I grabbed the half-eaten bun from the table and threw it at her, cutting her off. You think I'm not worthy of being your father? Fine. Get out. All of you, get out of my house. And don't you ever call me Dad again. After they left, I stared at an old photograph on the wall. It was me in my youth, full of life and ambition. Tucked behind it was our marriage certificate. I remembered. The day I first met Clara, I was the first person from our village to go to university. She was the woman my mother had rejected as a bride for my older brother. But my mother coveted the land her family owned. So, without telling me, she arranged our marriage. There was another reason. My own father had died in an accident trying to raise money for my tuition. My mother always felt I didn't deserve happiness, that I should live a life of lonely hardship just like her. She had always favored Julian. After we married, Clara was always distant. The only time I saw her truly happy was when she found out she was pregnant. I stayed home for the entire 10 months of her pregnancy to care for her. After the baby was born, she said something to me that I never forgot. I'll have to trouble you from now on. Not, thank you. Not congratulations. Just, I'll have to trouble you. In that moment, I knew she didn't see me as the child's father. A bitter smile touched my lips. That trouble was her plan, all along. She only ever smiled when Julian was around. I had even offered her a way out. If you're unhappy, we can get a divorce, I'd said. I'll tell everyone it's my fault. But she refused. And just when I thought our lives were getting better, she delivered the final, devastating blow. I sat with the old photograph until dawn. It was the first time in years I had felt so idle. I used to wake up at 4 in the morning to walk to the town market to sell vegetables I grew myself. After my mother and in-laws got me fired from several jobs, no one dared to hire me. I scraped by on odd jobs, shouldering the weight of 3 families, never resting. My mother's sharp taunts. You're a curse. You killed 2 people at once. My mother-in-law's shameless tirades. You killed our Clara, so you'll support us for the rest of your life. And you'll come over every day to cook and clean. I broke down, time and time again. I often asked myself what I was living for. And every time, a small, sweet voice would call me Dad. And that was enough to keep me going. The calls started coming. Chloe called countless times, apologizing. But her ultimate goal was for me to step aside for her real father. My mother-in-law called to demand her monthly allowance, with the sound of Clara and Julian's laughter in the background. My own mother called, telling me to send money to my sister-in-law and to apologize to Julian. I had seen a different life, had briefly tasted it. But 8 years after our child was born, Clara chose to fake her death and run away to the city with Julian. That choice drowned me in guilt for 10 years, trapping me in this small county. I don't know what they promised our families, what benefits they offered to make them all suddenly so concerned about me. I ignored their calls, one after another. I packed my meager savings, money I had set aside for Chloe's tuition. It seemed she no longer needed it. I found a new place to live. Finally, they couldn't sit still any longer. One day, as I was leaving my new apartment, I ran right into Clara. Leo, she said, we need to talk. It was the first time in all our years of knowing each other that we sat down for a formal conversation. She looked haggard, her face pale, and her dark circles pronounced. She, who was always so meticulous, had even buttoned her shirt wrong. Leo, I was wrong all these years. Can you forgive me? Her voice was thick with regret. When I didn't respond, she continued, undeterred. We were both failures. In this marriage, weren't we? It shackled us both. I just broke free of my chains first and found my true love. I just didn't know you loved me so much. The gap between us was too wide, she went on. You flew too high, and I couldn't reach you. So I had to do what I did. Besides, this marriage wasn't something you or I could just end. So, my failure was that I was too educated, that I had soared beyond her reach. She was here to apologize, but every word was a veiled accusation, blaming me for our marriage, absolving herself of any wrongdoing. End it. When could it not have been ended? You were there when our families planned it. You could have refused. When you were pregnant, you could have told me the truth. Even after the child was born, you could have spoken, but you didn't. So many chances, and you took none of them. I cut her off. Yes, we could have. I told you that back then. She seemed surprised by my response. Clara, I once loved you very much. I thought you were my wife, and you deserved all the beautiful things in the world. But I couldn't love her anymore. The first step to loving someone else is to love yourself. For 10 years, I had failed at that. Now, I needed to learn how to love myself before I could even consider loving anyone else. Then can we have a good life together from now on? A ringing phone interrupted her. Her weary face suddenly lit up. Perhaps the me from a decade ago was full of love for her. But after all this, even if a flicker of that love remained, her betrayal made forgiveness impossible. I could only lie to myself and say I no longer loved her. A faint smile touched my lips as I watched her finish the call. Chloe is having another banquet in the county tomorrow, she announced, her old arrogance returning. Even though you're not her biological father, you did raise her for many years. We'll condescend to invite you. She was so sure I wouldn't refuse. And she was right. I needed to go back and see what kind of good daughter I had raised. The next day, Clara and Julian, wanting to show off, had invited a large crowd. I saw many of Clara's relatives and my own. Neighbors greeted me with congratulations. Leo, you're a university graduate, and now your daughter is one too. It's been over a decade since we had a university student from around here. It's no surprise Chloe got in. With her old man tutoring her like that, he deserves half the credit. I just smiled, saying nothing. The atmosphere changed when people saw Chloe arm in arm with Clara and Julian. Eyes darted between me and the trio. Aren't they dead? Someone whispered. A murmur spread through the crowd. Even those who had once sided with Clara and Julian came to ask me what was going on. I remained silent. We had an accident a while ago, Julian announced smoothly. Thankfully, we're safe now, and we've come back to see Chloe. The suspicion in the crowd subsided, replaced by congratulations. Clara's relatives swarmed her, fetching her tea and showering her with compliments. Clara, you married a good man, one of her friends gushed. He never married another woman. He even supported your whole family. Meanwhile, Julian's friends were clapping him on the back. Julian, you have a great brother. He even raised your wife for you. He's worked so hard all these years. Now that you're back, you have to treat your brother well. They were the center of attention, while I stood on the periphery, an island of loneliness. Chloe, seeing this, walked over to me, a smug look on her face. Dad, don't you? I stared at her. I knew she couldn't possibly understand the depth of my suffering. At that moment, my sister-in-law arrived with her intellectually disabled son. Young lady, she said, her voice just loud enough for everyone to hear. Don't go calling the wrong man Dad. Isn't Julian your father? Didn't you say the other day that he wasn't your father? Have you forgotten so soon? The entire hall fell silent. My sister-in-law continued her questioning, her words falling like stones into the quiet. Clara and Julian looked horrified. The crowd's expressions shifted from curiosity to suspicion and derision. Even their closest relatives took a step back. The words, sharp as slaps, hit Clara's face. So the child Leo raised all these years isn't his. What right do they have to come back and claim her now? And Chloe disowned Leo? He would have been better off raising a dog. Chloe had never been spoken to with such contempt. Dad, she pleaded, turning to me. Quickly, explain to them. It's not like that. I crossed my arms, a smirk playing on my lips. I don't have a child that old. My only child is a cat named Coco. Leaving them in their stunned silence, I walked out and returned to my own home. I thought my life would finally find peace, but they wouldn't allow it. When I next stepped into my in-laws' house, Clara was no longer the arrogant queen. She was scurrying around, serving tea, helping everyone but herself. My mother and mother-in-law sat together, watching me. Leo, you haven't sent this month's living expenses, my mother-in-law began. Isn't your daughter back? Isn't your precious son back? I shot back. What does that matter? You're still our son-in-law. Besides, our precious son isn't married yet. The money she sends back isn't nearly enough. If you hadn't driven her away, my son wouldn't be without someone to care for him. Now give us the money. I stared at her in disbelief. She knew. She had known all along. My mother nodded in agreement. She knew too. Who in this family didn't know? Oh right, just me and my sister-in-law. Rage erupted in my chest. My fists clenched. No, I have no money. They started to advance on me, but I changed my tack. Didn't I give all my money to my brother? Didn't he say he was going to throw a big birthday party for you? I looked at Julian with feigned shock, squeezing out a few tears. Everyone's attention shifted to him. Julian, while you were gone, Leo took care of us. He raised your daughter for you, and now you steal his money? Are you even human? Clara was the most furious of all. You told me Leo took all your money. But look at him. He doesn't look like he's seen a cent of it. Julian waved his hand dismissively. All right. I invested the money. Soon, we'll all move to the big city, live in a big villa. I'll buy each of you a house, and I'll give you. As he rambled on, I saw the doubt on people's faces. I smiled. Brother, we can't just take your word for it. I glanced at him timidly. My feigned suspicion enraged him. You country bumpkin. I'll give you 500,000. I'll write an IOU right now. He scrawled out a note and thrust it at me. I took the note, relieved. Whether the investment was real or not, this money, I would get back from him. Seeing his confidence, the family's faith was restored. I saw Clara's posture straighten. She was no longer serving tea. She was waiting to be served. Just then, Chloe arrived with her university acceptance letter, bubbling with excitement. Dad, I got the letter. Good girl. I knew you could do it. Julian beamed. Dad? She began hesitantly. The tuition is a bit expensive. 30,000. And with other expenses, it'll be about 50,000. 50,000 is nothing. Dad will give it to you, Julian declared, shooting me a disdainful look. Unlike some people who can't even provide a decent place to live. Chloe acted as if she had just noticed me. Uncle, what are you doing here? Her face was a mask of disgust. She quickly retreated to her room. I ignored her. I had come for one reason only, to divorce Clara. Before I could speak, a man burst through the door in a panic. Julian, you've ruined me. That wasn't an investment, it was a scam. All my money is gone. You have to pay me back. Julian leaped to his feet. What? What did you say? He demanded, grabbing the man. Impossible. You're lying. I got a payout of 300,000 before. You must have stolen it. He raised a fist to strike the man. Just then, Chloe emerged from her room. Dad? Look, what do you think of this? She asked, holding up a frame for her letter. In the next second, Julian snatched the acceptance letter from her, tore it to shreds, and jabbed a finger at her head. Study, study, study. What's the use of studying? 50,000 for what? You'd be better off getting married. Chloe stared at the confetti of her dreams, tears streaming down her face. I thought you were some big shot, the scam man sneered. Turns out you're just another fool who got cheated. Did you invest everything you had? Julian's rage exploded. He lunged at the man, and a brawl erupted. It was quite a show, but I still called the police. I could just make out Clara's posture. Once so proud, now slumped in defeat. The teacup her mother had just personally made for her was snatched away, and the hot tea poured over her hands. Julian's wild eyes landed on the IOU in my hand. Tear it up. Tear it up now. It was you. If it weren't for you, this wouldn't have happened. You set me up. He came at me, swinging. I dodged as best I could, but he landed a few punches. Enraged, he grabbed a knife from somewhere and lunged at me. The police arrived just in time and arrested Julian. At the station, my mother was still screaming. It's you, you jinx. If it weren't for you, my precious son wouldn't have been arrested. Officer, you've got the wrong man. Arrest him. He's the real criminal. Ma'am, the officer said patiently, your son is being detained for assault and battery. My mother's gaze turned on me, no longer indifferent, but filled with venomous hatred. At the station, I learned that Julian had another registered wife and 2 children in another city. Hearing this, Clara stared at the handcuffed Julian in shock. You have someone else? I told you I never registered my marriage to Leo, that it was a fake certificate just to fool him, and you still wouldn't marry me. It was because you had someone else. She launched herself at him, scratching at his face. What? We weren't married? The certificate was fake? My mind went blank. I was a fool, drowning in guilt for a decade, a servant for a decade, all for a fake marriage. All the resentment, all the anger, finally hardened into resolve. I didn't just want an apology. I wanted them to pay. The police asked if I wanted to reconcile. My mother looked at me pleadingly. Julian and Chloe were both confident, certain I would choose reconciliation, because they knew I was the only one holding our broken family together. I looked at each of them, made my decision, and met their eyes. No reconciliation. Their faces fell. You ungrateful brat, my mother shrieked. Your brother worked so hard, and you won't forgive him. If it weren't for you, we'd all be living the good life in the city by now. What a sin. Hard work? I knew my mother was like this, but her words still cut deep. Julian was released a few days later. I waited for his revenge, but it never came. I pieced together what happened from neighborhood gossip. His relatives, who had once hailed him as their leader, now hounded him daily for their money back. He tracked down the scammers, only to learn that he was not only broke, but as the guarantor, he was now on the hook for millions in debt. They beat him, took his phone, and left him for dead in the wilderness. He was found a week later, his injuries so severe they couldn't be properly treated. He was left a cripple, unable to care for himself for the rest of his life. I hired a lawyer and sued Clara's family. I didn't want money. I wanted a sincere apology. Their first reaction was outrage. They wailed to the neighbors that I was an ungrateful monster. Clara even posted a video online. My husband, she cried, against the backdrop of the dilapidated house I had lived in for a decade. After I was severely injured in an accident for 10 years, I came back full of joy, only for him to demand payment for living expenses. He never supported my parents. He never took care of my child. When the story got big enough to attract reporters, I finally had my chance to speak. I supported her parents. I even supported her lover's family. Was she really too injured to come home? Is that child really mine? And that house, I lived in it for a decade. How did it suddenly become the place where she lived? After my public statement, Clara deleted the video. The public turned on her, and her family's reputation was ruined. Her brother's engagement was even called off. For a while, they were quiet. But soon, they had a new plan. Since Clara had never been legally married, they would marry her off to recoup some of their losses. At this juncture, Chloe needed money for university. When Julian heard she still planned to study, he beat her and warned her, "Forget about university. From now on, you stay home and wait to be married." His wife from the other city also found out about his deeds and filed for divorce. His brilliant solution? To marry Chloe off to his own intellectually disabled son. Keep the wealth in the family, he reasoned. Maybe the next child will be a genius. The next time I saw them was at Clara's wedding banquet. Julian, believing he had spent enough money on her to own her, crashed the party with a group of thugs. "This ugly woman from the one family has a daughter with another man," he roared. "If you dare marry her, I'll kill you right here." Chloe stood beside him, a lifeless doll. I didn't approach them. I just watched as the two families started to fight. "Since it's such an auspicious day, someone has to get married," one of the guests shouted. "Chloe, you can marry in your mother's place." Or, another chimed in, "We can have an auction. Highest dowry gets her. She's a university student, you know." A wave of disgusting, leering gazes washed over Chloe. She panicked and ran to Julian's wheelchair, begging him, "Dad, I want to study. I don't want to get married." Even Clara, forgetting her own predicament, screamed at him, "You're not human. She's your own daughter." "My daughter? Don't you lie to me. I had a paternity test done. She's not my child." Clara and Chloe froze. I froze. It no longer mattered whose child she was. No one would play the role of her father anymore. There were no more fools left. Clara and Chloe seemed to accept their fate, their eyes turning dull and gray. Julian accepted a dowry of several $100,000 from a man in his 60s, and Chloe was sold. And Clara, in a way, got her dream. She became Julian's wife, long after they had come to despise each other. As I watched the tragedy unfold, I realized they had both noticed me. A flicker of life returned to Chloe's eyes. She mouthed the words silently. "Dad, I want to go to school." I didn't answer. I watched the light in her eyes fade, until she was once again a puppet, moved and manipulated by others. Clara, seeing me, screamed as if I were her last hope. "Leo, I'm your wife. Leo." This time, I turned and walked away. "From the day you denied I was your father, we were no longer father and daughter. You were the ones who destroyed the family I tried so hard to build. I will never step foot in your world again." In the end, I anonymously transferred her the money for tuition. I hoped she would continue to grow, wild and untamed, just as my father had sacrificed for me to study, saying, "My Leo must keep studying, leave this place, and see the bigger world for me." Chloe, don't be like me. Don't let a pack of ignorant, fearless villains ruin your life, even after you've been to university. I didn't follow what happened to them after that, but I heard things. Clara and Julian lived together in my old, dilapidated house, fighting constantly. Julian, no longer the gentle lover, now ordered Clara around, beating her whenever he was displeased. I got back the money I had given her family over the years. It was enough to live comfortably in the city for a long time. I picked up my paintbrush again and became a street artist. I painted people, one after another. They never called my work rubbish. They would receive their portraits with warm, happy smiles and praise my skill. I learned to enjoy the present, to not waste my time on terrible people and their terrible problems. I saw Clara once on the street. She was selling vegetables, just like I had for 10 years, struggling to survive under the heel of her family. I saw Chloe too. She would drive by in her new car, often lingering near my spot. She never approached me, and I never acknowledged her. I would just stroke my cat, Coco, purring in my arms. Sometimes, when I packed up to go home, I would find a photograph on the ground, a family portrait of me and her, with a note written on the back. "Dad, I hope you will be happy from now on." I would turn my back, leaving a pile of torn paper on the pavement behind me.